Okay, we're going on to Chapter 7, Section 5. And in this section it deals with rational equations. So another way of saying that is equations that have fractions in it. Now in an earlier chapter we did do some equations with fractions. And here they're just going to get a little more challenging. But the same rules apply. That is, you want to get rid of the fractions. And to do so, you get rid of fractions by multiplying every term in the fraction by the least common denominator. So let's just take a moment to see what we're going to multiply each term by. And I'll write that in red. So in number 1, to get rid of all the fractions, the least common denominator is 7. So I will multiply every term by 7. In number 2, what do you think is the least common denominator? Again, it's the denominator that's going to get rid of all these fractions. And if you said 9, that is correct. How about in number 3? (6y). In number 4, and in number 5. Now, I've chose the least common denominator because that will get rid of all of the fractions. And now we multiply through. Here the 7 cancels out. And we get x plus 14 equals 28. Now we're going to transpose the 14. On this side it becomes a negative 14. X equals 14. Notice how much easier it is to do when you get rid of the fractions. That's what we're shooting for. All right, in number 2, again, the 9's cancel out. You're left with a 3. So when you rewrite this, this is going to be x, probably should have left more room here, plus 12x equals 26. And it never hurts to check your work. Cancel out the 9's, you're left with an x. 3 will go into 9 3 times. 3 times 4x is 12x. And that's 26. Okay. Group-like terms. You get 13x equals 26. And now you're going to divide by 13. I ran out of room, so x equals 2. Again, a lot easier when you get rid of the fractions. In number 3, the y's cancel out. Here the 6 cancels out. And here the 6y cancels out. So you end up with 5 times 6 is 30. This is going to be plus y equals 23. So again, the y's cancel out. 5 times 6 is 30. The 6 cancels out. You're only left with a 1y. We just write the y. Here everything cancels out. You're left with the 23. Now we want what a positive y is, so I'm going to transpose this to the other side where it becomes a negative 30. And we get y equals negative 7. Over here, we're going to cancel out the x, cancel out the 4, cancel out the 2, we get a 2 left over, and we cancel out the x. So we get 4 times 8 is 32, plus x equals 2 times 9 is 18. And this becomes a negative 32 on that side. So we get x equals 14, negative 14. Again, all these were pretty easy. Now we're going on to this last one. Well, we know this will cancel out, and this will cancel out. And here we had to multiply the 3 times this, and you get 3a minus 12 plus 2 equals a. So next step, group like terms. And this will give me a 3a minus 10 equals a. I'm going to keep my a's on this side, so I'll bring this a over here as a negative 1a, or transpose it. This gives me a 2a. Bring my negative 10 over to the other side. That gives me a positive 10. And I divide both sides by 2. I get a equals 5. Okay, as we move along, again, we're dealing with rational equations, fractional equations. And we know from an earlier chapter and our previous lesson, get rid of fractions by multiplying every term by the least common denominator. That is true for most things, well, all things actually, but in number 6, there's an interesting thing that's going to happen. When you have a fraction equals a fraction, a shortcut to do it is to cross multiply. And that's the technique we're going to use now. So this is going to become x, well, I'll put it in black here. Now, that's the same as multiplying both sides by each of these. But when it's in a fraction form like that, you can just cross multiply. And notice we've gotten rid of the fractions. All right, let's look at 7. We want to get rid of the fractions. Well, our common denominator is y minus 5. The thing is, multiply every term by y minus 5. Y minus 5. Y minus 5. And let's look at 11 for a moment. What will be the common denominator there? Well, if you notice this one, this is the difference of perfect squares, and that's going to factor into, let me do that right here, 3y plus 1, 3y minus 1. And notice that's what we have here as well. These are the conjugates of this. So we're going to multiply every term by this. Now, another way to do it, instead of putting it by each term, we could put like a brace out here, or bracket, and then multiply everything by that. 3y plus 1, 3y minus 1. And we're going to multiply each term by that. Writing that 3 times gets a little complicated, but basically that's what we're going to do. So this is the start of the process to get rid of the fractions by multiplying every term by the least common denominator. So we did this one already, so let's multiply through. This will be x squared plus x equals 6x minus 6. Now we see here we've gotten a quadratic equation, and then in an earlier lesson we had the technique for solving it, which is to put the equation into standard form. Standard form of the quadratic equation. So what we need to do is bring everything over to this side. So this is going to become x squared. Bring this over, it becomes a negative 5x. Bring this over, it becomes a positive 6. And that equals 0. And now what we have to do is factor that. And that's going to be x, 3, 2, negative, negative. And again, I ran out of room. So this equals 0, so x here will be a 2 or a 3. Those are my solution set here. In this one, again, we're multiplying every term by the common denominator. Here, they just cancel out. And now we're left with 3y. Now we have to multiply the 2 there, 2y, minus 10 equals 4y. So here we group like terms, and we get 5y minus 10 equals 4y. And we're going to transpose, subtract 4y from both sides. We get y. Add 10 to both sides, 10. Y equals 10. And once again, it's so easy to do once you get rid of the fractions. And that's, of course, what this lesson is all about. Okay, so what do we do here? Well, we're going to multiply this term by this. So here the pluses cancel out, and we're left then with 3y minus 1. So this cancels out with this. We multiply the 1 times that, and we get this. equals. Now, all of this will cancel out, and we're just left with a 2. Now again, this was plus, so let's put the minus there. And then it becomes a minus 1 times this, which will be a negative 3y plus, no, a negative 3y minus 1. So we're multiplying a minus 1 times this term here. So this becomes a negative 3y and a negative 1. Okay. Never hurts to check your work. So we're going to group like terms. 3y minus 1 equals negative 3y plus 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. This comes over to this side as a positive 3y, so we end up with 6y. This comes over here as a positive 1 equals 2. Divide both sides by 6. Y equals 1/3. Okay. When I worked on this one, all of the work is correct. The answer is y equals 1/3, but what I forgot to do is to check it. If I put 1/3 here, 3 times 1/3 is a positive 1. This becomes a positive 1. 1 plus a negative 1 is 0. So here we are finding this answer makes this denominator a 0. And that's something we need to be careful of. I should have thought of that ahead of time, but we still have time. So that this becomes then, for this answer for number 11, is no solution. Empty set or something like that. And why? We did get a solution. But once again, this solution made this denominator a 0. Therefore, there's no solution. If there was another number that worked, then that would be the answer, but not this one.